Welcome to Healing Generations, a podcast creating a dialogue uplifting the importance of healing, strengthening, and supporting our communities, and that addresses the disparities and inequities in communities of color. Healing Generations is brought to you by the Healing Generations Institute, a collaborative initiative of the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Elders. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our new releases.
So, Kane, I wanted to welcome you to the Healing Generation podcast. For us, it's excited that we're going to get to dive into some conversations, but I think it's important that we acknowledge that this is the first podcast that we're going to be doing in person. So we're excited not only to be able to hear your story, but also to be able to share space with you. So my name is Ariel Jimenez. I am the network coordinator for the National Compadres Network, and it's going to be one of the people to really guide the conversation. A lot of our conversations on this podcast are really healing-centered, talking about what does healing mean for today's community, what does healing mean for our families, but also what does healing mean for ourselves. So we're just happy to have you. My co-star here as well, Alejandro Osuna, who is our LCC fellow, who's also going to be guiding the conversation. So AB, I'll pass it over to you before we get started.
Hi, my name is Alejandro Osuna, Alex, AB, Ariel's best friend, lots of names. I'm super excited to be here. It's our first in-person podcast, and I'm so used to doing stuff with my hands or drawing or something. So I'm excited to actually focus on someone's face and be in person. But yeah, I am very excited to have you here as a guest. My brother has been talking to me about you for, I feel like, years now and saying Kane wants to meet you. And I'm like, okay, we'll do it. And then it just never happens. So I'm happy it finally happened. And the way we start things off here is just a little conocimientos, a little, who are you? Where are you from? What do you want our listeners to know?
Well, thank you for having me. I feel very lucky to be your guest today and to have it be the first, in live. So my name is Kane Andrade. I am a photographer and videographer based here in the Bay. I started doing this about 8 years ago. I feel very privileged and lucky to do what I do and be able to do this full time, but also have my work involve the community. Community is important to me. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm from San Francisco, so based here in the Bay. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
No, definitely welcome. I know I heard a lot of great things about you. Definitely ready to dive in to what does photography mean to you and really that connection to the community. But before we get there, I mentioned in the introduction that we really talk about healing. Mm-hmm. Right. So when you hear that word, when you hear that concept, what comes to mind and how would you define healing for yourself?
I feel like healing for me is kind of an ongoing journey with my heart just being at peace with itself. And I don't know if I'll ever get to that final destination because there's always something. And I really enjoy that journey. I'm not really giving myself that hard of a time when something because I'm transitioning right now, I feel like I'm not really putting so much pressure on I need to transition right now. I'm enjoying the process because I know I'm going to get, even when I get to the point that I feel like I might be at, there's always something else, you know, and when it comes to it, either with myself or my photography journey, there's always this evolving learning process that I feel like I'm just enjoying the ride, and I really love that.
No, I mean, I definitely relate to what you're saying in the sense of wanting to get to that final destination and realizing there probably isn't one, especially when it comes to transitioning. I got on testosterone and I was okay, what about my chest now? And then I got top surgery and I'm okay, now what about this? And so it's I had to realize more of what my wins were for that day. I didn't get misgendered today, or someone called me mijo instead of mija. So I think that part is really important. But going back to what you stated in our first question, when it came to working in your community, obviously photography is a big thing that I don't think people look at as community work, but they don't realize how much power is behind a single photo. So I want to talk to you about what work have you been working on in the community that you want to highlight?
Yeah. I kind of want to say this before I talk about that, but growing up, photography wasn't an option. Like photography isn't respected in my family, like with my dad. It was just one of those things that was never going to happen because I either had to be a cop, a lawyer, or a doctor. And I want to say just follow your heart, even though, like, I feel like my dad was always telling me photography wasn't going to do any good for you. You know, an artist, you can't do this, you can't do that. If you're good at it and you become the best at it, I feel like you're going to win because I feel at peace with photography. So always follow your heart.
If I could actually add to that, because I think that's important, right? I think growing up, there's so many boxes that we get put into, and there's so much expectation that there's a lot of pressure to not follow that. So if I could ask, like, what gave you the courage to say, you know, I appreciate you, Dad. I appreciate you for wanting to go a different route, but I think this is where my passion's at. Like, what gave you that courage to fully go in?
I think it was really the people around me, and then seeing other people do it as well. I didn't really see anyone like me doing it. So I feel like I had to be the one to do that. And, you know, I was the first one to go to the military, first one to graduate, first one. So I was like, I'll just be the first one to be an artist, you know, because I feel like no one's going to hold my hand through this. I got to give myself permission to be able to do what my heart wants to do. And just, I'm not saying don't listen to your parents because your parents are right always.
Yeah.
But, you know, at that point I was old enough and I had gone through like the military. So I gave myself permission to be the artist. And then, you know, I told my dad and then at that point I had already been doing photography. So he saw that I was winning. I was succeeding. So he was like, right on. You know, I support you.
Yeah. But I know you had an original question that you had asked him before we got distracted.
Yeah. My bad. That I feel like that was so much more important than what I was asking. It had more to do with the question about healing, in the sense of photography being that healing aspect in the community, and if you had any community work in that sense.
Yes. So it took a minute to get there with the community thing, but I realized, you know, growing up, I've always been kind of an activist. My mom kind of trained me early on to, you know, give and give. And I feel like with photography, I was never really happy with not having my community with me and bringing my friends and family with me, because I feel like there's so much power that is in that. And it took me, I think, for like 5 years to realize that I wanted to involve community, because I was just kind of like a lone wolf and I was doing photography by myself and just, you know, capturing landscape. But then there was a moment where I realized that involving the community in the photos, that there was just much more heart and passion. There's more in it. And then sometimes I just like can look at it and be like, wow, this is beautiful. I just feel like it meant more to me. So I definitely always try to involve the community from then on.
Yeah, and I think I appreciate that a little bit more. You know, I'm very fortunate to have people within my circle that have that creative lens, that sometimes within community work, you don't see the value in it until it's missing. And when you don't have someone to be able to capture the voice of the voiceless, then you're able to see, okay, that component is equally important. How do we make sure that we have all our community present at, whether it's a march, whether it's a ceremony, whether it's a protest, you know, whatever it might be. So I definitely appreciate your gift. I think the other thing that you mentioned is really being part of the military. So I was wondering if it's okay if you could talk a little bit about that. Like, what led you to the military and what were some of those experiences? You know, because it's kind of a big deal. Like, first, thank you for your service, but also to be able to represent a nation on that level. It comes with a lot of pressure, a lot of responsibility. But yeah, do you mind speaking on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that the military really came from my dad. My dad, you know, he didn't really speak English, and he wasn't really someone that, he didn't have the tools to guide me into college. And I resented him a lot for that. And, you know, signing up for the military is pretty easy. And I knew I had to do something because my dad, there was all this pressure from him to just be the best. So I was like, okay, so in order for me to go to college, I have to go to the military because the military pays for school. So I needed to figure it out. My dad, like, he was just always pushing to kind of, get up, let's go, come on, and
The ponte las pilas.
exactly. Oh my God, that's his favorite word, literally, to this day. But yeah, I signed up. He signed off because I was 17 at that point.
Yeah.
And then literally the day I graduated from high school, I went to the military, joined the United States Marine Corps, and then boom, 5 years later, yeah, I went in during Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which is a time that, it was illegal to be queer. And if they found out that you were queer, you could go to jail or be kicked out. So I feel like I was able to get through that because my dad's tough. I think a lot of like where I'm at, I don't give him enough credit, but he really made me tough, and I was able to get through that and then get through just life,
Yeah.
No, definitely. I mean, there was a Don't Ask, Don't Tell. There was also, I mean, when Trump was president, the trans ban, that was something that was huge in the military, where a lot of trans people were getting excluded from the benefits that military personnel get, because they weren't allowed to serve for our country, which I think is so stupid. Like, you want people to go fight for this country that they love, and just because they were born in the wrong body, you're not going to let them. So I think that's definitely something that was a little strange. And I mean, I give you props for being able to go through that. That takes a lot of courage. And I'm sure it had some trauma from it too, because you feel like, oh, I can't feel comfortable in my own skin. So I'm happy you're able to be on your healing journey now to help you go through whatever you need to go through to be okay with yourself now. So I'm happy you're still here and with us now and proud and out. Yeah. When I first heard about you, my brother showed me your Instagram page, and I'm pretty sure it was when I had probably first came out as trans, and I was pre-transitioned everything, and my brother's like, look, there's this really cool photographer that I'm friends with, and he was like, I want you to get to know him. And I know you were a big help in my journey for my brother, to help him not feel comfortable, but feel like he had someone to talk to about things he struggled with when it came to my transition. So I want to talk to you about photography in the sense of it being healing, not necessarily for the community, but for yourself. Because I know for my brother, he always said, like, when he picked up a camera, it was like the world lifting off his shoulders, like it was like he could breathe. So I want to ask you, how has photography helped you in your healing journey?
Yeah, I feel like I don't think about that question too much, but it kind of like makes me tear up a little bit because like photography has really like healed my soul. And it's hard to explain because like I feel it and I don't have the right vocab to say it.
Yeah.
But it's literally my art put onto canvas, like how I feel and like how I just want the world to just see how I feel on this print, or on online. And I get excited about like producing this art. I can't imagine doing something else. I really can't. Like, I just can't imagine myself being happy doing that, I enjoy the process of it all. The setup, taking the picture, then editing the picture, because all of it has to do with like how I feel, like the lighting, like how I feel that day and how I want to like portray that moment, that like still moment. I can make it like moody or bright and happy, or the colors, like literally everything I have control over. And it's just literally my heart and soul put onto this piece, But yeah, it really like warms up my soul, like doing it. It's so hard to explain really like how, but I really love the process and like I really can't imagine doing anything else. Yeah, it's hard to explain, but this is something that I want to do for the rest of my life. Yeah.
No, I think you definitely found your life calling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And pictures are trippy because I could look at a certain picture, especially like in my grieving process, and it could take you back to a moment and relive a moment. I think, my roommate in college, Miguel Ozuna, who said, no, this transports you.
Mm-hmm.
You can teleport. just by looking
Wow.
at a picture.
Exactly.
And that has always stuck in my mind because I could look at a picture and see my mom in the kitchen and I could almost smell what she was cooking.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a trip, right?
Yeah.
To think that someone's gift to be able to capture a moment onto an image can really take you back to relive, re-smell, re-experience some of those experiences. That to me, until those words hit my ears, I didn't know how to explain that. But talking about your craft, is there any project that you're currently working on that you want to highlight, or any previous project that you worked on that you're like, oh, that's the one that I would want to redo, better do, undo, things like that? What project comes to mind? Because I heard that giggle, so I know there's something that came to mind.
I think recently I've been really proud of my work. I've
Yeah.
been highlighting, trans men, something that I didn't often see. Like, I don't really often see it within the people that I follow online, and maybe I need to expand my network. But I've been highlighting people that I want to see more, which is trans men and drag kings. And honestly, as of lately, I've been really, really proud of my work. I think there's a lot of intention that I've been putting into each photo that I take, really as of like within the last year. And I've been doing this for 8. So I laugh because, for the past 7 years, it was just kind of like following trends and not even following my heart. I was just following what other people did. And I was like, oh, I want to do that or go there. But now I'm following myself and I'm not listening to a trend. I don't care about the hashtags. I'm just doing what feels right to me. And like I said, it just fills my soul and I want to keep doing it. Recently, I just did a shoot with trans men, specifically BIPOC trans men, and that was with Apple. So yeah, we're working on an awesome Pride project with Apple, so that's fun. And then we have one with Alaska, and I'll be highlighting drag kings. So I'm just really excited, and I feel very privileged to be doing what I'm doing, because now that I moved away from following everyone else and just doing what my heart wants, people are gravitating towards that. So yeah.
That is very cool. I agree with what you're saying in the sense of, I think it's very iconic and like really cool of you to put people out there that aren't really on media. Like a lot of people are saying like, well, they're being more inclusive now of like brown and black and Asian people, but they're like all like these skinny women. And then you never see like trans men really out there. And if they are, they're like the ideal version of what a trans male is supposed to look like. Where like a trans male could look like you, or could look like me, or could look like someone who's a lot more feminine presenting, or hasn't transitioned fully. And I think that's something that people don't like talking about right now in that sense. Like the word trans is still it's still taboo to people. And people look at it as like a scary topic. So a question I have for you is, what is your future and the hope of your media work with trans people or with the LGBTQ community, or even if you want that to be your brand? Because I know that's a hard thing for people when they come out, they're kind of tokenized, I guess, and they're like the spokesperson for trans people. So maybe like, did you want to get away from that? Like not really necessarily wanting to be a spokesperson, or like, do you have any difficulty with that?
I think I don't ever want to get rid of my transness. Like, I also don't want to be the spokesperson, but I also don't want to just be the photographer or like the artist. I want to make sure that people know that I am a trans photographer, because I feel like by saying that, you can really see my journey. Like, you can see what I've been through, and you could see there's a new lens on my photos. Like, if you just say I'm the photographer, then like you don't really know why I did what I did. Why am I highlighting this trans guy? But I feel like I don't really want to be the spokesperson, but I also don't want to get rid of my transness. I just want to be me, but it's hard to say I don't want to get hired because of being trans, but also I'm brown. Like, I want to work. I need to work. I'm a brown trans man. Like, I deserve, to get paid, and to take up space. So, yeah, we all deserve to take up space,
I mean, I agree. And I'm glad that you're saying that, right? Because sometimes I think in many spaces, you have to leave part of you at the door. right? Am I coming in representing this part of me? Am I coming in representing that part of me? And what part is not going to get accepted in this space? And I think that's hard when you have to take off multiple lenses and put on different ones depending on how they're asking you to show up. But I think the other part that I want to acknowledge, that you saying that proudly, I'm a trans man, I'm brown, I'm this. I think it took a lot for you to get there. And sometimes we appreciate the beauty of it, but we don't acknowledge the journey, right? So is there anything about your journey that you want to highlight? Maybe some obstacles that you might have gone through that you really had to overcome in order for you to stand here as the person you are, proud of all of you? You know, is there anything that you want to talk about?
It's definitely been a journey. You know, I'm 30 years old. I don't know. We've all come a long way, but like for myself, I really had to like dig deep and think about like, this one's hard to explain. When I was little, I didn't understand. It's like everyone was calling me a girl, but I didn't feel like a girl. Like, and I didn't understand why. And I don't think that other kids thought about that. You know, like in my brain, I was like, wait, are other kids actually thinking about this? But then growing up, I'm like, okay, they'd never had to think about that. Like, why is my brain telling me that I'm a boy? It was just very confusing. It was very confusing, and it really took up a lot of space in my brain. And I wish that I had people around me to kind of be like, okay, like, this is what you're going through. Like, here's a book or something, or like a movie or a documentary.
Here's a manual.
Yeah, here's that. Because like now, I feel like if my child told me that, I would be able to tell them like, hey, this sounds kind of like this. But, you know, moving forward to now, I have people around me now to kind of like, not that I need anyone's validation, but just kind of like hold my hand and just hang on with me through this journey. And I feel like it has really helped me. Having your chosen family and having people that really love you for being you makes the world of difference. Because if I have questions, like, you know, having these trans guys around me, if they're in their 8-year journey, I could be like, hey, this is what's happening. Or like, my hair is thinning. They're like, oh, it's because of the testosterone. Like, you know, things are happening, body changes, like just anything. Now I can ask them, you know, and that made my heart so much lighter. But, you know, growing up, it was just like I had so many questions. I didn't know who to ask and why I was so confused. I just didn't get it. And definitely like within the last 2 years, I feel like things have been so much easier in my trans journey. But man, back then I just didn't know who to go to. I couldn't see anything or watch anything. I just didn't understand my brain. And it was very confusing. It's very sad and it hurts a lot. Like, you know, because people don't think about that. Yeah. You don't have to question why you like that girl. You know, you're like, oh, I'm a boy. I like that girl. I'm supposed to like, that's just what it is. But I feel like trans people, you're just like confused. You feel trapped. You feel trapped and you want to cry because like nobody gets it. And then you don't get it either, you know? So, yeah.
No, I mean, I definitely relate to that, especially when it comes to being younger. I think that part for me is where I hold a lot of heaviness still from my childhood, because like I now know that like my parents would have been accepting of me if at 6 or 5 I told them I'm trans. But when you're 6 or 5, you don't know how to say that. Right. I didn't even know what trans was. I didn't know what gay was. So how was I supposed to? It was like a part of me in my brain just wanted to shout at them, like, can't you see I'm a boy? Like, why can't you just tell me? Like, why can't you tell me that I'm that? Like, why do I have to figure it all out and go through my puberty and go through all of this for you to understand that I'm trans? And I think it's like that heaviness, I guess. And I think it like, obviously, that doesn't go away overnight, you know? So it's like, even now that I'm still transitioning, I still think back on my childhood and I still think back to like that little girl who felt uncomfortable wearing skirts or going into the girls' restroom. Like, I don't know if that was a thing for you. I always felt gross going into the girls' restroom.
It was scary.
Yeah, it was like, I don't, like, why am I here? Like, this is
It
gross.
feels uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's like you walking into the girls' restroom and you're like, that's how we felt. Like, you're like, wait, I don't belong here. I'm like, close your eyes. You
Yeah,
know, like,
literally.
Like, that's how it feels.
But for me, I think something like you mentioned, the people now that you have in your life that kind of validate those experiences for you. Like for me, I have my buddy Mitch who came out probably 2 years before me, but he like, oh my God, fastest transition I've ever freaking seen. Like he got approved by everything like that. And so he's been a big help for me when it comes to that and validating experiences. And I don't talk about him enough, but he's helped me a lot in my transgender journey when it comes to transitioning and feeling more comfortable saying that. Because I remember for the first year, I couldn't even say that. Like I couldn't even utter the words, I'm trans. So something that I want to ask you is there anyone in your journey, whether it has to do with being trans or just your healing journey in general, that you would like to uplift that's been there for you that has helped you heal?
Right. My ex-girlfriend was actually the first one to call me he. And I want to give them a lot of props for like going through that. Because I was she, and then they were like, no, you're not. Like, you're a boy. And I'm going to call you he. And that was very hard for me to like, to even hear them say he, but it felt right. And I'm glad that they did that because they really saw me before I saw me. So I'm really thankful for them, and I don't know how they did that, but it's like some trans superpower that they have. But yeah, I really want to like, thank them because that was really the kickoff to me being, trans. But also my friends, I have a group of cis guy friends who are predominantly white. And I told them on the phone when I finally decided that I could just let it out. I told them, I was like, hey, I'm going to the doctor and I think I might be trans. And I don't know what this means, but I hope that you can just go along the ride. And they were like, yeah. Okay, what do you want, a cookie? I was like, okay, I'm crying, but whatever. They're like, you're not special. Okay, cool. Good for you. So that was really cool that they were just like accepting. And I mean, that's like the bare minimum. But I'm just glad that I have a good foundation of friends and they just mean the whole world to me. Like that even makes me want to cry. Oh my God, I'm just like emotional today. No, but
and that's all. That's 100% good, man. We love emotions here. We accept it all.
Yeah, no. So my friends, and my family is like newly getting on the train, but yeah, they're figuring it out.
No, you know what? And I will say, I'm as a cisgender man, I think there's a lot of privileges that we have that sometimes we don't acknowledge as privilege. We never had to answer some of those questions or had to feel some of those things. So I think when you say they were able to see you before you saw yourself, that's a beautiful gift for someone to offer you. And for your friends to say, like, you ain't special. Like, first of all, you are special. but I understand where that's coming from, right? Yeah. I understand them
Good
wanting
intentions.
to show up for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And really saying, whatever you need, man, you got me here. I'm in your corner. So I think that's beautiful. I think the other part, too, that's really hard, when we're talking about healing, is sometimes we don't know what we're healing from. I think in many instances, because especially, and I'll speak for me, as a Latino man in my family, in my community, we're not able to talk about a lot of things. Those questions that you had crossing your mind, you're scared that if you ask those out loud, you don't know what's going to come back at you. So if I may ask, what are some things that you think you're still healing from in your journey? Some of the things that maybe you haven't been able to face or that you face and you're like, you know what, I'm going to put that there and I'm going to revisit it later. Is there anything that you feel comfortable speaking about in terms of that?
I feel like some of us did do this. I really blocked out a big chunk of my life because it was very painful.
Yeah.
My dad, he's like a man.
Yeah.
He is a man. with like
The men of men.
men of men. He's got big paws, and we as brown people, I feel like we all know what the chancla means, and like what's the belt? The
El
belt
fajo?
Is
El
that what-
cinto?
El cinto, yes. You know, that is something that I feel like I'm still. That one's a journey. That one's definitely still. That's like a separate journey. And that one, I feel like. Because I grew up with just my dad. So I didn't really have. Like, I had cousins and stuff, but like. You know, I didn't grow up with my mom. It was just my dad.
Yeah.
And it was just me. It's just me and him. His whole focus was on me. Anything that I did, anything I didn't clean, one little dust, he was on me like a hawk.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like I blocked out anything before 12. But my healing journey with him, I've tried to communicate how I feel, but in chunks. I try not to say too much. He's trying, and I can see that, but I don't want to give him everything all at once. I came out to him as a lesbian in the beginning. That was wrong, and when I found out I was trans, I think like 10 years later, I waited a couple years to tell him because I just need to also give him time. I kind of planted the seeds.
Yeah.
And I do that a lot with him. You know, I tell him I plant the seeds, and because I feel like his energy, like it unbalances me very quickly.
Yeah.
So my healing with journey with him is like that is a journey, but
The quest.
it's there, but I definitely just need to plant the seeds with him, and I definitely always tell him like what is going on, like if I feel some type of way, but I say it in a way.
I have a friend who I used to do that with my mom. I have a friend who just came out as trans. Mom, what do you think about that?
Yeah, what do you think about the community?
I was like, you like that, yes or no? That was definitely it for me. I always had a friend who did something before I did it, and I was like, what do you think about
you can't
that?
just say, like you said, you can't just say how you feel. You can't be like, I'm a boy, I'm trans, and I like girls. Like, you just can't say it like that, or else like it's the end of the world. Like you just can't. You have to phrase it a
And I
certain
think,
way.
I mean, that's hard, right? Because at the same time, like your experiences, what you're going through is valid, but you have to try to kind of translate that in a way that is more digestible for him, in a way that is going to land well with him. Otherwise, there's there's a whole other door you're going to open, right? So I think that all of that's difficult.
I especially think in the sense of, from what it seems like, is the idea of straying from perfection. Because I do think that was something for me growing up. Like, I felt like I had to be perfect all the time. Like, I felt like I was that child. I had to like graduate and do a doctor's and get straight A's all the time and don't be the trouble child. But it's because my older siblings were the ones getting in a little bit more trouble. So I felt like I couldn't add something onto my parents' plate like that. So it's like, well, I have a friend who's trans. What do you think of that? And it really was just like test and go, like, oh, I have a friend who's gay. Like, is that okay? Like, what should I tell them? What advice do you have for me? And it was seen of me straying from the idea of a perfect then daughter was okay before I was able to fully say, okay, I'm a guy. What do you think about that? Like, I'm ready for, like, it took me a long time for me to be like, okay, I'm ready to have your idea of me change. And I think that part was kind of rough. And I don't know if it was similar for you in that sense of it changing and being like, what now? I think that was hard for me. It's like, okay, now what? What's going to change?
Yeah. I have a video or an audio recording of me coming out to my dad, and it was so hard for me to tell him that I was trans, so I had to have my sister online to kind of make sure that he wouldn't freak out. But his wife kind of, like I said, she planted the seeds. She knew about me, and I hadn't come out to him for like 2 years. And like she was just, kind of planting the seeds for him. And then I decided to finally come out. And like right before I said it, I was crying. I was like, I'm really scared to tell you this because I'm scared that you're not going to love me anymore. And he really saw like the pain, like right there. like he really felt it. He's like, whoa, like, no, like, I don't want to lose you. Like, whatever you have to say, we're gonna get through it together. And that was the first time I ever heard him say that.
Mm.
Like, because before it was just like fear in his eyes. Like,
Yeah.
and yeah, like I said, with me and him is a journey. I think that's one of my biggest healing. Like, I mean, I've been through a lot, like military, but I think with me and him, like, that's one of my biggest journeys.
Yeah.
Because I feel it so intensely. Like, I feel like as brown people, like our parents, like first generation, like, oh my God, we had to deal with so much, and I've like just ignored it. Like,
Yeah.
and I just pretend it never happened. But it's kind of helped me in the way to kind of pretend. But also, I need to like sit down with my dad sometimes and just be like, can you just say you're sorry? Like,
Mm.
I know you made me strong. Like, thank you
Yeah.
for making me strong. But also, like, this is a lot
Yeah.
that not a lot of other kids have to go through, And I'm 30 now, and it still weighs.
Yeah. And I mean, you hit it right on the head. I think I've had that relationship with my dad maybe this last couple years where he's been able to open up and even apologize for some of the things that maybe about 3 years ago, both of us
Wow.
pretended didn't happen. Right? Because when I would bring up certain things, eso no pasó.
Oh my God, the classic line.
Mijo,
I love that.
No sé por qué tú piensas eso.
Oh my God.
Right? So for me, it was a lot of denial. And I think it was easy on him and on me.
No.
And I think also, in recent conversations, opening up to my dad was a gay Latino in the 60s in Mexico.
What? No
and,
way.
And, he's fully married, has a family, but recently opened up to me and my sister and my brother saying, your grandpa tried to beat the gay out of me. And I married your mom as a compromise. Your mom was infertile, couldn't have kids. And I was a gay man who had a boyfriend and it was not accepted. So me and your mom married each other, not out of love, but out of compromise. Never in a million years would I think that of my dad. Wow. And in having these conversations, his dad, my grandfather, passed away last year. And that brought up a lot of those memories. And I remember having those conversations. He apologized. I didn't know what to do with that apology. I've always wanted it. I was eager for it. And when is he going to apologize? And when he apologized, I was like, what do I do with this? But I think that allowed me and him to really take our relationship to another level, which for me, it's like, I wish I would have had that conversation with him 10 years ago when I first thought about having that conversation, right? So thinking about that, if you were able to have a conversation with the younger Kane, or maybe that next generation or those younger folks, what is one piece of advice that you would tell yourself maybe 15, 10 years ago? That you say, make sure to do this, or make sure to live like this?
I want to say like to live authentically, but also it's dangerous to live authentically.
It is.
Like it's like I want to say, okay, be yourself, but like also that's dangerous because if I would have said that to my dad or like come out earlier or did whatever I did at a different time, I just don't think it would have been good.
Mm-hmm.
Like mental health wise and like everything else wise, like, but when you do come out, I feel like if you have that gut feeling, then maybe it's not the right time.
Yeah.
If it doesn't feel right, it's okay not to do everything like so in the moment, like take your time.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, have patience, with yourself. So I would tell myself, my younger self, to be patient. I just always wanted everything now. I want like I want to move out now. I want to like leave now. I hate this. Like run away. Like it's just like all of it now.
Yeah.
But definitely have patience.
And then you get there, you're like, what was the hurry?
Yeah. 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 Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate how vulnerable you have been throughout this podcast. We're not ending. But I just
okay, bye.
I just really want to give you that thank you because I feel like I do think it's because we're in person too. It makes it easier. Like when you're online looking through a screen, you're like, I don't want to tell you everything. But I appreciate you being so open with us. And I just want to say we're getting to one of my favorite questions ever. And it is a question that I have asked every single podcast since the very first podcast. So I'm very excited to ask it to you because I know you will have an amazing answer. And
Oh no,
so
I'm scared.
This is a scenario. You have a microphone in a stage, and whatever you say into this microphone is going to reach everyone on the world. Everyone's going to hear you. What is one issue you would like to uplift?
Oh gosh.
No pressure, man. Just
No
one
pressure.
issue.
All right,
Worldwide.
podcast over. Bye. I mean, I feel like if I ever talk about anything, it has to be like coming from my experience and like my heart, because I can't speak on an issue that I've never experienced or have gone through. I think a lot of people have a hard time understanding trans people, especially right now. And I think I just really would want to talk about like how I've gotten to this point, and yeah, that was a big question.
No, I mean, it's definitely a difficult one, and I think it's the reason why I like asking it so much, because you could see like the gears working in people's minds. But it's also just it's a real question for you not to put filters on, because I think that's something that people try to do. They try to come up with like the perfect answer, and they're like, well, I want world peace, and so I think it's
It's not a pageant, queen.
it's it's really just a question to see like what is important to you in that type of sense.
I think just like being a brown trans man, because it's just like one of those things that's just like really heavy. Being a trans person, and then being a trans man, and then being a brown trans man, and then being a brown trans man who served in the military. Like, that is a lens right there. So I feel like that is something that I would just talk about, like, my experience, and kind of explain that journey and why I'm not really different than anyone else. Like, we've all gone through our journeys, but yeah, I would never want to speak on like the whole trans community, but just my experience, really.
No, yeah, for sure. I appreciate that. I asked literally right now if I could ask the last question, and it's probably because of the conversation we've been having. I feel like I'm really excited to hear your answer. And I mean, we talked about it beforehand. It was the question you were nervous about. And I've seen you kind of get comfortable and let loose. And the question is, when did you first realize you were sacred?
Oh, yeah. That one is definitely a journey still, but with me, it really took, kind of looking at myself and looking, like, for a long time, when I looked in the mirror, I did not see myself. I was like, who is that? I do not recognize who you are. My eyes were looking at something, but my brain didn't. It was just somebody else. Like, I didn't get it. And I think really for the first time I saw the reflection, like, was within the last 2 years, in the last year. And that's, I feel like, when I realized I was like sacred. Like, I felt safe within myself. Like, I could see myself. I felt comfortable speaking. I felt like my heart just felt warm finally, and I felt like, this is my body. This is me now. This is who I am. Because really before I didn't know who that was. I just didn't get it. And now I feel like really comfortable in my body. I love like everything. My legs, the hair on my legs, the little tiny hair on my face. Like, I love it, I love my voice. Before, I hated my voice. I was like, what is this high-pitched thing that's coming out of my body? I hated it. So I hated talking. Like, I just couldn't. But now I love my voice. I love listening to it on the headphones.
Yeah.
I just want to keep talking. I sound cool.
We want to keep listening, so go ahead.
No, but yeah, that's really when I felt like sacred finally, when I was starting my transition.
Thank you for that. Your words really reminded me of one of my maestras. Her name's Phyllis Hubbard. And what she said, and speaking to us, because a lot of us were questioning whether we were in our right body. A lot of us were questioning whether we were in the right space. She said, orchid doesn't grow up wanting to be a flower. is just the best orchid it can be, and it finds the garden to belong to. And then she said, because we were really talking about self-care and self-love, and she said, you truly get the essence of self-love when you love all of you, even the parts that you wish were different. So when she was saying that, you reminded me of those words right now. So I just want to say thank you, because sometimes we forget those beautiful teachings that we get. And we forget that us too need to feel sacred. And hopefully it's not just a one-time thing. Hopefully it's an everyday thing. Every day when I wake up, I feel, I look, I am sacred. And I think until we get there, it's a struggle. It's a struggle. So I just want to say thank you. I know we're getting to the end of our conversation. And I want to make sure that we all get at least an opportunity for closing remarks. But before you do that, I just want to say thank you, because a lot of what you shared today, man, powerful. I could only imagine the sacrifice that you had to endure in order for us to be able to witness you in your power and witness you in your sacredness. So I truly appreciate that. But I'll pass the palabra to you. Is there any closing remarks, any last things that you want to say to us or the listeners? Either one.
Yeah, I just really appreciate y'all listening and kind of giving me a space to share. You know, I've definitely have different perspectives, and I just enjoy, you know, like kind of saying what I've been through, and then, you know, hearing what your dad, like kind of similar to my dad. So it actually makes me feel like less alone, you know, and it's nice to be able to share our stories, and you being trans, and we have shared experiences, and it's really nice to be able to talk about that, and also like have people be like, oh, wait, them too? Wait, me too. Crazy. Like we're all like on this journey, you know, together. But yeah, I just appreciate you all for having me here.
Thank you. Closing remarks?
A big thank you for being on here. We were trying to figure out who was going to be our first in-person podcast, and I'm pretty sure I said your name right away because Miki's been talking about you nonstop. All good things.
What'd you say?
I need the transcripts.
All good things. Like I said earlier, I appreciate you being vulnerable with us and really just sharing your story. I was a little nervous about having someone on the podcast that hasn't been a part of our work, but I mean, I feel like you just proved the point I've been trying to make, in the sense that if you're connected to NCN or not, you have a healing journey, and everyone's going through their own sacred journey. So thank you for being such an amazing guest. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. It has been an honor to be a co-host with you, and thank you to our listeners.
Yeah, I think just to close up, I think in today's conversation, just acknowledging my privilege. You know, I definitely don't understand some of the journeys that some of our trans folks have to go through. So for us, if I could speak on the behalf of the listeners, I think for us, it really gives us an insight of how we can best show up to let, you know, all our trans folks, especially our trans male Latinos and brown folks, that they are sacred, that they are loved, and that we do want to be here to walk with you in whatever way you need us to, whether it's in front, by your side, or behind you. We got your back. I think also, I just appreciate everybody here just being authentic with their own story, with their own gifts, baggages, and everything like that. So I'm just excited. I think we need to have a part 2 with you in it, because I think there's a lot that we didn't get to dive in. But to our listeners, thank you for joining us. Thank you for continuing to listen to us, and make sure that you follow us on whatever platform you listen to best. So that was the Healing Generation podcast with Kane C. Andrade, A.B. Ozuna, and Ariel Jimenez. Thank you all.
For more information about Healing Generations and the Healing Generations Institute, visit nationalcompadresnetwork.org and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our new releases.